All right, let's jump right into a really fascinating mystery. When you think of Europe, what's the first thing you picture? For a lot of us, it's got to be castles, right? These huge stone giants on top of hills, looking over rivers. Their towers tell these incredible stories of kings, knights, and legendary battles. You see them everywhere. France, Germany, Scotland, Spain. These fortresses are just baked into the landscape. But there's this one weird exception, a big blank spot on the medieval map. A place where you'd expect to see these stone monsters, but they're just gone. I'm talking about the Netherlands, a country with an amazing, powerful, and often violent history, but its landscape is almost completely missing that classic castle. And that leads to the big question we're digging into today. Where did all the Dutch castles go? The answer, as you're about to see, is this incredible story of genius, revolution, and a total rethinking of what a fortress could even be.
I mean, look at this. This is the image we all have in our heads, isn't it? A massive stone fortress way up on high ground, basically a symbol of power carved into the land. These things were built for one main reason, to show everyone who was in charge. Their height gave them a perfect view of everything around them, so the nobles who owned them could control the area, tax people passing through, and keep themselves safe from attack. They're symbols of a feudal world, where your power was all about how much land you owned and how many knights you had.
And yeah, this one just drives the point home. It is all about being tall, about dominating the terrain. You build high so you can see your enemy coming from miles away, and you build with crazy thick stone walls so you can survive a siege. For centuries, this was the playbook for military building all across Europe. The castle was the ultimate weapon and the ultimate status symbol for the landed aristocracy. It was the heart of all that feudal power, a stone anchor holding a lord's territory down. It was pretty much the only way to build, or so they thought.
Okay, now let's completely change gears. This is the Netherlands. See the difference? The horizon is just wide, low, and super flat. There are no hills to build on, no mountain passes you need to guard. Instead, the whole place is sliced up by canals and rivers. A huge chunk of it is literally below sea level, land that was wrestled away from the water by pure human effort. This is not a landscape that works for a classic castle. You can't really dominate a landscape that has no high ground to begin with. This kind of geography forced a totally different way of thinking about everything, about society, and especially about how to defend yourself. Which brings us right back to our main question. This region was the center of global trade, a place of constant rebellion, and the setting for the incredibly brutal 80 Years' War against the Spanish Empire. You'd think there would be fortresses everywhere, but you just don't find them, at least not the kind you're expecting. So where are they? Did the Dutch just forget how to build them? Or did they come up with something way, way smarter? The answer is hidden in three big ideas that shaped this unique nation: a war against water, a revolution in warfare, and the rise of a whole new kind of power. Our first pillar is the most important one. Long before the Dutch fought any human enemy, they were in a never-ending war with the sea. For 1,000 years, their whole existence has been one long battle against floods. And this constant fight with nature didn't just shape their personality, it completely dictated what they could and could not build. It forced them to become the best hydraulic engineers in the world, and in the process they found out their greatest weapon was the very thing they were trying to fight. To really get what the Dutch did, you have to understand the polder. A huge part of the country is built on this stuff. Reclaimed land. It's basically a giant bathtub, with dikes acting as the walls, made by pumping all the water out. Now, what's really key here is the geology. This new land is soft. It's made of peat, clay, and sand. It's basically a marsh, and it's not stable. So trying to build a giant, heavy stone castle on that kind of ground, it would be a complete disaster. The foundation would sink, the walls would crack. The very ground beneath their feet said no to the idea of a classic European castle.
And the way they did it is just brilliant. First, you build a big wall, a dike, around a lake or part of the sea. Then, using windmills for power, you just pump and pump and pump the water out into canals that drain it away. And boom, you've got new, fertile land you can farm on. This whole process, done over and over for centuries, is literally how the Netherlands created itself. It shows an incredible mastery of engineering, and a kind of community effort that was totally different from the top-down feudal power that built castles everywhere else.
So here's the kicker. The Dutch didn't just learn to keep the water out, they learned how to control it. And if you can control water, you can turn it into a weapon. They figured out that in their flat, low country, a controlled flood could be a way better defense than any stone wall. They could turn the entire landscape into a giant, impassable swamp, basically swallowing up roads, drowning supplies, and stopping an invading army dead in its tracks. Their biggest threat was about to become their national security system. And this wasn't just some idea they talked about. Let's look at a real historical case from the 80 Years' War for Independence from Spain. In 1573, the city of Leiden was surrounded by a massive Spanish army. The people were starving, they were desperate, and so the rebels made a crazy decision. They purposely broke their own dikes, flooding the fields all around the city. The Spanish army got totally bogged down in the rising water and mud and had to give up the siege. Then, the Dutch fleet was able to just sail over the flooded fields right up to the city walls to bring in food. Water, not stone, had saved them. It was a total game changer.
Okay, so let's move on to our second pillar, because this all builds on itself. At the exact same time that Dutch were becoming masters of water, a huge technological revolution was happening on the battlefields of Europe. And it was about to make the traditional castle completely useless. This revolution was gunpowder, and more specifically, incredibly powerful cannons that could change the art of war forever. Right. Think back to those tall, proud castles we saw at the beginning. For hundreds of years, their height was their biggest strength. But against cannons, it suddenly became their greatest weakness. A tall stone wall is a big, fat, easy target for a cannonball. And when a solid iron ball smashes into a rigid stone wall, the wall just shatters. The very thing that was supposed to protect you, that huge, imposing wall, was now a deadly weakness. Castles that had been standing for 500 years could be smashed into a pile of rubble in just a few days. They needed a new plan fast. And this shows the evolution perfectly. On the left, you've got the old-school medieval castle, high, proud, and easy to break. On the right, you have the solution, the star fort. And what's the difference? Everything. Instead of building up, you build low, so you're a smaller target. Instead of hard stone, you build with thick, packed earth that can absorb a cannonball's impact instead of shattering. And most important of all, instead of straight walls, you build this complex, star-like shape with pointy bits called bastions. These angles meant there were no blind spots. Defenders on one point could shoot all the way down the wall of the next, creating these deadly crossfires that would just annihilate any attackers.
And here it is, the Star Fort in all its beautiful geometric glory. This is the town of Naarden. See, it's not just a castle. The entire city is the fortress. This design was absolutely perfect for the flat Dutch landscape. They didn't need a hill. The fort created its own defensive landscape. And look at it. It's surrounded by moats filled with water, blending this new fortress tech with their ancient control of water. This became the new Dutch castle. A low-profile earth and water masterpiece of engineering, designed not to tower over the land, but to scientifically control it and make it a death trap for any invader.
Hey, if you're enjoying seeing how geography and history completely reshaped Dutch building and defense, then don't let this be the end of it. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel and make sure to ring that bell. That way, you won't miss out on our next deep dives into amazing historical and geographical quirks from all over the world. Go on, subscribe now. Okay, so we've seen how the land and new technology sparked a military revolution. But our third pillar explains the cultural and money reason why the Dutch didn't even want to build castles, even if they could have. The Dutch Golden Age wasn't run by kings and nobles who owned land. It was built by merchants, traders, and bankers. They were creating a brand new kind of society, the world's first modern capitalist republic. And with that came new values and totally new ways to show off your power and status. This is the absolute key to the whole thing. In feudal Europe, a nobleman's power came straight from the land he owned. That's why he built a castle, to protect his land. But in the Dutch Republic, the guys in charge were merchants in cities like Amsterdam. Their wealth didn't come from a plot of land. It came from ships sailing to Asia, from stocks and trading companies, from complex financial markets. Their power was all about cash flow and global commerce. Building a huge stone fort in the countryside would have been completely pointless for them. It had nothing to do with where their money came from.
And to give you a sense of just how massive this new merchant power was, just look at this number. The Dutch East India Company, or the VOC, was the world's first multinational corporation. At its height, its value has been estimated at over $8 trillion in today's money. That is more than the entire modern economies of Germany and Japan combined. This was wealth on a scale that old world kings could only dream of. And it was all created not from land, but from trade. This new kind of money created a new elite with totally new tastes.
So, what did this new merchant class do with all their cash? Well, they didn't build drafty, uncomfortable castles. They came up with new status symbols that fit their city-based commercial lives. They built these incredible canal houses right in the heart of their cities, tall, skinny homes with fancy gables. They filled these houses with amazing art, paying artists like Rembrandt and Vermeer to paint their portraits. They showed off imported luxuries like porcelain from China. And for a weekend trip, they built these elegant country homes called Buitenplots, which were all about pleasure and relaxation, not about war.
Now this is a really cool detail. This new architecture directly fueled the cultural boom of the Dutch Golden Age. Architects designed these canal houses with huge north-facing windows. Now why north-facing? Because in the Northern Hemisphere, northern light is cool, it's indirect, and it stays consistent all day long. It is the absolute perfect light for a painter's studio. So this specific design choice, which came from a desire for elegant city homes, created the perfect conditions for the masterpieces that defined the era. The very design of their houses was a symbol of a culture that cared more about art and business than military posturing.
So now we can finally bring our three pillars together: the war with water, the revolution in military tech, and the rise of a merchant republic to solve our mystery. We can see that the missing castles aren't a sign of weakness at all. It's the result of this powerful and unique mix of forces that led the Dutch to completely redefine what a fortress really is.
So let's loop back to our original question. Does this mean there are literally 0 traditional castles in the Netherlands? Did they just lose the blueprint for how to build them? No, of course not. The real story is a lot more subtle, and honestly, a lot more interesting than that.
You can absolutely find castles in the Netherlands, like the gorgeous Muiderslot you see here. But a lot of these are from a much earlier time, before all these revolutionary forces came together. They're kind of relics of a time when the Netherlands was a bit more like the rest of feudal Europe. Or, in the case of places like the incredible Kasteel de Haar, they're often 19th century romantic recreations of older castles, built more to be fairy tale homes than actual military forts. They are the exceptions that prove the rule. The Dutch didn't forget how to build castles, their entire society just evolved beyond needing them.
So here it is, the big takeaway. The real Dutch fortress was never just one building. It was a national system. A dynamic, intelligent, and deeply connected network of defenses. It was built from 3 crucial things: water, used as a weapon through those tactical floods; innovative walls, in the form of those low-profile geometric star forts that totally mastered the age of cannons; and global wealth, which paid for a powerful navy and a professional army, and created a society that valued trade and art over feudal power displays. That was their true castle, and it was far more powerful than any stone fortress could ever hope to be.
And that's the end of our journey into the case of the missing Dutch castles. If you love digging into these mysteries of the past and want to be part of a community that's all about knowledge and curiosity, what are you waiting for? Go ahead and leave a like and subscribe. It really helps us keep making explainers like this one and figure out what big curiosity to tackle next. So subscribe and let us know in the comments what country we should investigate next.